Our headlines today. Drive this evil out of our cities. President Zelensky's message to Ukrainians in Russian-occupied cities as a planned evacuation of civilians from Mariupol is aborted due to shelling.
Ukrainians in all cities of Ukraine where the enemy has come into, you have to go on the offensive. It is necessary to fight if there is an opportunity.
The payment giants MasterCard and Visa suspend their services in Russia in protest over the invasion of Ukraine.
Just before we go, a reminder of the news we brought you a little earlier in this programme. The payment giants Visa and MasterCard are suspending their services in Russia. MasterCard said it will no longer support cards issued by Russian banks, and MasterCards issued outside the country will not work at Russian merchants or ATMs. Visa will cease all transactions in Russia in the coming days. Plenty more on the situation on our website. President Zelensky's condemnation of NATO's leaders over not implementing a no-fly zone is the top story there.
Towns and cities around the capital, Kyiv, continues to suffer shelling with heavy bombardment reported in Irpin.
Ukrainian forces continue their resistance. They say this was a Russian helicopter brought down by one of their missiles close to the capital.
And more support for Ukraine across the Premier League. Stands returned blue and yellow for the nation, but Chelsea fans were criticised for chanting support for their Russian owner, Roman Abramovich.
Ukrainian forces say this shows their level of resistance, shooting down a Russian helicopter. And the country's president has given another defiant rallying speech with a message to his own people living under occupation.
You have to go on the offensive. It is necessary to fight if there is an opportunity. It is necessary to go out and drive this evil out of our cities, from our land.
There have been protests around the world, but also in Russia. With more companies pulling out of the country, life is getting harder. Visa and MasterCard have announced they're suspending their payment services, so doing business will get even tougher.
Have a look on the front of the Times. It's the Sunday Times. A really moving picture. It says, the Sunday Times, that the world has watched in horror as Russian artillery pummeled the Ukrainian city of Mariupol, and that violated a ceasefire. In that picture, you'll see a destroyed motorway bridge and people huddled underneath trying to get across the river there. Hundreds and hundreds of people trying to get out of cities, but as we were talking about this morning, that ceasefire that was announced, a temporary ceasefire, simply did not come to pass. The Russians continued shelling certain parts of the country.
Yeah, you can see there, can't you? If the infrastructure is broken, how do you even get to the point of escaping? Meanwhile, the Observer's reporting on Vladimir Putin's warning that the West, that sanctions, his warning to the West, that sanctions are akin to an act of war.
But the Defence Secretary has warned Mr Putin not to test the UK. In an interview with the Sunday Telegraph, Ben Wallace said the Russian president would be mistaken if he underestimated the UK's resolve.
Meanwhile, the Daily Mail on Sunday reports on Boris Johnson's 6-point plan to defeat Vladimir Putin as he moves to assume leadership of global efforts to end the war in Ukraine.
Let's get an update on everything that's been happening with events overnight in Ukraine. Dan Johnson is here once again to run us through all of the details. Dan, good morning.
Yes, good morning. It is the 11th day now of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So let's try to give you an idea of where things are actually up to. You can see here on the map of Ukraine. As things stand, Russia has yet to take control of Ukraine's two biggest cities, the capital Kyiv and the industrial city of Kharkiv here in the east. The areas in red are the areas controlled by Russian forces so far. Now, Kherson here in the south is the only major city so far to have fallen under Russian control. And as we zoom in, you can see here Mariupol is a key port on the south coast there. It's home to more than 450,000 people who are facing a really desperate situation as Russian forces continue to besiege that city. Now, the humanitarian corridor that was due to be created there yesterday and in nearby Volnovakha, but that didn't happen. The Russian forces broke the ceasefire that they had promised, throwing that attempted mass evacuation of civilians into chaos yesterday. Now, meanwhile, there's been heavy shelling that's continued in towns surrounding the capital, Kyiv. These are pictures from the towns of Irpin and Bela Tserkva, which is near Kyiv. Now, Ukraine's president has once again repeated his plea for more help. Volodymyr Zelensky used his evening address last night to urge citizens to fight back against Vladimir Putin's military.
Українці в усіх наших містах України.
Ukrainians in all cities of Ukraine where the enemy has come into, you have to go on the offensive. It is necessary to fight if there is an opportunity.
Кожного разу, коли є можливість, треба виходити і гнати.
It's necessary to go out and drive this evil out of our cities, from our land.
Нашої землі.
Well, the Ukrainians certainly are fighting. This is a Russian helicopter that was shot down by local forces. NATO and other Western leaders have again, though, ruled out for now the idea of that no-fly zone, the thing that Ukrainian leaders have desperately been asking for to help stop the Russian bombing. But international efforts do continue. The Prime Minister Boris Johnson has laid out his six-point plan to solve the crisis, which includes putting more pressure on Vladimir Putin's regime and ensuring cooperation across what he calls the Euro-Atlantic area. And the economic sanctions and measures on Russia continue, with more businesses pulling out of the country as well. The payment companies Visa and MasterCard have said that they are suspending their services in the country. So life is getting harder for people in Russia itself, but that is, of course, nothing to what ordinary, innocent Ukrainians are going through. Life gets more desperate and more threatening for them day by day, really.
Absolutely, Dan, and we will be speaking to some of those Ukrainians later in the programme. Thanks. Dan Johnson there with the latest on this Sunday morning.